2 cruisers came for me on my own land, and Marilyn smiled too early. Marilyn Pierce called the cops on my grandfather's cabin like she owned the dirt under my boots. She said her husband had county connections, said I was trespassing on protected HOA shoreline, said my old Montana cabin was finished. I didn't argue. I let the cruisers come, let her smile, and let her say his name. Because the second Daniel Pierce recognized mine, her whole story started cracking. If you like quiet justice, hit subscribe and stay with me. Marilyn Pierce was screaming into her phone when the mascara started running. I already told you, she shouted, pacing in the middle of my gravel driveway. He's trespassing on protected HOA shoreline. He's refusing to leave. I need deputies here now. I stood 10 feet away with my hands loose at my sides, watching red anger climb up her neck. Behind me sat my grandfather's cabin, gray cedar logs, riverstone chimney, old tin roof patched more times than I could count. Beyond that, the lake moved quietly against the dock, like it had no interest in human stupidity. Marilyn pointed at me as if the person on the phone could see through her finger. Yes, him. Grant Keller. He's acting hostile. That was the first lie she told that morning. I had not raised my voice. I had not stepped toward her. I had not even asked her to leave after she walked past my wooden gate and planted herself on land my family had owned since before her HOA was a name on paper. She ended the call and wiped under one eye with the side of her finger, smearing black mascara across her cheek. Then she smiled. It was not relief, it was victory. My husband works with county planning, she said. Daniel Pierce knows every important person in Flathead County. You picked the wrong woman to test. I looked past her toward the tire tracks she had left across the pine needles beside my drive. Her white SUV sat crooked near the split-rail fence, engines still ticking. On the passenger seat, I could see a leather clipboard and a stack of orange notices clipped together like ammunition. You called the sheriff, I said. I called law enforcement, she snapped. There's a difference when someone is threatening community property. This is not community property. She laughed once, sharp and clean. That cabin sits on Silver Pine Shore's frontage. That dock affects our lake view. That shoreline affects our values. You don't get to hide behind some old family story and ignore standards everyone else respects. Old family story. I let the words settle before I answered. My grandfather built that cabin in 1924, and Silver Pine Shores has improved this area since 2019, she said. Like 5 years of committee meetings outweighed a century of deeded land. Communities evolve, Mr. Keller. People either adapt or they create problems. Before I could respond, sirens cut through the pines. 2 sheriff's cruisers came hard up the gravel road, lights flashing red and blue across the lake, across the cabin windows, across Marilyn's wet cheeks. Dust lifted behind them and rolled through the morning air, turning the sunlight copper. Marilyn stepped back and folded her arms. There, she said. Now we'll see how calm you stay when real authority gets here. The cruisers stopped beside my pickup. Sheriff Owen Maddox got out of the first one slow, hat low, eyes already moving from Marilyn to me to the cabin. A younger deputy stepped out behind him, one hand near his belt, cautious because dispatch had probably told him he was responding to an unstable trespasser. Marilyn rushed forward before either of them spoke. Sheriff, thank God. This man refused to leave protected HOA property. He became aggressive when I attempted a compliance inspection. I want him removed immediately. Maddox did not look convinced. He looked tired. Morning, Grant, he said. That one word changed Marilyn's face. Not much. Just enough. Her mouth stayed tight, but her eyes flicked from the sheriff to me, then back again. She had expected confusion, maybe suspicion, maybe handcuffs if she performed hard enough. She had not expected the sheriff to know my first name, Sheriff, I said. Maddox turned to Marilyn. Mrs. Pierce, where exactly are you claiming this trespass occurred? She lifted her chin and pointed toward my cabin. Here, the lakefront parcel. The association has authority over shoreline compliance. Do you have a deed showing HOA ownership? Her smile stiffened. The governing documents are very clear. That's not what I asked. The younger deputy glanced at me, then at the old cabin. He saw the hand-cut logs, the private road sign, the weathered mailbox with Keller burned into the side. He saw enough to start wondering why an HOA president was standing in my driveway like she owned it. Marilyn opened her clipboard and pulled out an orange notice. This property is in violation of visual, structural, and shoreline use standards. Mr. Keller has refused cooperation. My husband can confirm county planning recognizes Silver Pine Shores community interest. There it was again. My husband, Daniel Pierce. She said his name like a key that opened every locked door in the county. She had no way of knowing I had heard that name before. Not at a barbecue, not at a fundraiser, not in some friendly planning meeting. I had seen it buried in federal land fraud files years earlier, attached to zoning approvals that moved too fast and lakefront parcels that changed hands too quietly. Sheriff Maddox took the orange notice but did not read it yet. "Grant," he said, "you want to tell me what happened?" I looked at Marilyn. Her arms were crossed, her chin high, her whole body leaning into the belief that power was finally arriving on her side. "She entered through my private gate without permission," I said. "She claimed HOA authority over my cabin. When I told her this land was not part of Silver Pine Shores, she called 911 and reported me as a trespasser." "That is not accurate," Marilyn snapped. "He is manipulating the situation." Maddox raised a hand. "Let him finish." The silence after that was small, but it mattered. Marilyn felt it too. I continued. "I have the deed inside. Original family parcel. Recorded long before the HOA existed." Marilyn laughed again, louder this time, performing for the deputies. "A deed does not exempt anyone from community standards." I looked at her then, really looked at her. Cream blazer, expensive sunglasses pushed up into styled hair, mascara still streaked under one eye, clipboard clutched like a badge. She thought she had brought the law to my driveway. She had actually brought witnesses. Sheriff Maddox finally unfolded the orange notice. His eyes moved over the page. The longer he read, the flatter his expression became. "Mrs. Pierce," he said slowly, "this says failure to comply may result in fines, legal fees, and lien review." "That's correct. Against this cabin?" "Yes." "On what recorded authority?" Her jaw tightened. As I said, my husband can explain the planning connection. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not fear, recognition. People who have real authority cite documents. People bluffing with borrowed power cite names. Maddox folded the notice and handed it back to her. "I'm not removing Mr. Keller from his own property today." Marilyn stared at him. "Excuse me?" "This is a civil matter at best," he said. "And from where I'm standing, you're the one on his driveway." Her face flushed. "Sheriff, you are making a mistake." "Maybe," Maddox said, "but I'm not making it at gunpoint on a gravel road because somebody waved HOA paper at me." The younger deputy looked away, hiding the edge of a smile. Marilyn saw it. Her humiliation sharpened into fury. "You will regret dismissing this," she said. "Daniel will hear about it." I almost said, "I'm counting on that." Instead, I stayed quiet. Because the question that mattered was no longer why she called the cops. The question was why she was so certain Daniel Pierce could make my cabin disappear. As Marilyn marched back to her SUV, orange notices trembling in her hand. She turned once more. "This is not over, Mr. Keller." I watched dust curl around her tires as she backed down my road. "No," I said quietly. "It isn't." And for the first time that morning, I understood something clearly. Marilyn Pierce thought her husband's name would scare me. She had no idea that name was the reason I was going to start digging. After Sheriff Maddox left, the driveway looked almost normal again. The dust settled over the ruts from Marilyn's SUV. The lake went back to tapping against the dock. My grandfather's cabin stood behind me like it had stood for 100 Montana winters, quiet, square, and unimpressed. But the orange notice in my hand changed the shape of the morning. I carried it inside and laid it on the kitchen table beside my coffee mug. That table had knife marks from my grandfather cleaning trout, burn rings from my father's cigarettes, and one deep gouge from when I was 12 and dropped a hatchet trying to prove I could split kindling indoors. Marilyn called all of it visual decay. That was written right there on page 2. Exterior log surface presents aged, non-uniform appearance, inconsistent with Silver Pine Shores lakefront standards. I read the line twice, not because it hurt, but because I wanted to remember the exact arrogance of it. The cabin was not fancy. It had hand-cut cedar logs gone silver with age, a riverstone fireplace built crooked but strong, and a tin roof that popped when the sun warmed it. My grandfather built it in 1924 with 2 brothers, a borrowed wagon, and more stubbornness than money. Every board had a reason. Every repair had a story. After my divorce, I came back here because there was nothing left in Virginia that felt like mine. The house was sold. The lawyers were paid. My old life had been reduced to signatures and forwarding addresses. But this cabin still smelled like pine smoke, lake air, and black coffee. It gave me back something I had not known I was missing. Marilyn saw none of that. She saw an old truck near the shed, stacked firewood under a tarp, a fishing boat with chipped green paint, and dockboards that did not match the polished composite decks of Silver Pine Shores. Page 3 listed non-compliant equipment visible from community waterline. That meant my grandfather's boat. Page 4 listed unapproved shoreline structure. That meant the dock my father rebuilt after the spring flood of 1983. Page 5 listed failure to maintain luxury frontage continuity. That one almost made me laugh. Luxury frontage continuity. On land where my grandfather once trapped muskrats to make winter grocery money. At the bottom of the packet was the threat: 30 days to submit a corrective action plan, 15 days before preliminary fines began, $750 per day after the compliance window closed, plus legal fees and lien review. Lien review. People like Marilyn loved that phrase. It sounded clean, administrative, almost boring. But a lien is not boring when it lands on your home. It is a knife wrapped in office language. I flipped back to the first page and looked at the header. Silver Pine Shores Homeowners Association, Architectural Standards Enforcement Division. Beneath that was a county reference number printed in small gray text. CPD-LFR-19-044. I stopped moving. CPD meant County Planning Department. LFR usually meant Lakefront Review. 19 matched the year Silver Pine Shores was incorporated. I had spent half my career reading documents people hoped no one would read closely. Fraud rarely announces itself in bold type. It hides in footers, reference lines, wrong dates, missing signatures, and copied language from files that should never have been connected. I ran my finger under the reference number. Why would an HOA violation packet carry a county planning reference? I turned the page again. On the last sheet, under Supporting Compliance Authority, the language shifted. Most of the packet cited HOA standards, But one paragraph mentioned anticipated shoreline conformity under future county development alignment. Future county development alignment. That was not HOA language. That was planning language. I heard Marilyn's voice again in my driveway. My husband works with county planning. Daniel Pierce. The name sat in my head like a locked drawer I had not opened in years. I went to the small office off the kitchen and pulled out an old legal pad. I wrote 3 things: Silver Pine Shores boundary, county planning reference, Daniel Pierce. Then I added a 4th. Why now? That question mattered. I had been back at the cabin for 6 weeks. Marilyn had not knocked when I first arrived. She did not come during the first load of boxes or when the electrician replaced the breaker panel. She appeared after the county posted preliminary notices for North Shore redevelopment meetings. I had seen those notices at the feed store. I had ignored them because my land was not part of any development corridor. At least, I thought it wasn't. A truck rolled slowly past on the lake road. I looked through the window and watched it disappear between the pines. White pickup, no logo, tinted windows, moving too slowly for someone who belonged. I took a photo of the packet. Every page, every footer, every signature line. Then I slid the original into a manila folder and wrote Marilyn Pierce, first contact, across the tab. By late afternoon, I walked outside with the folder tucked under my arm and stood at the edge of the dock. Across the lake, Silver Pine Shores glittered in clean lines and expensive glass. White decks, black railings, matching boat lifts. It looked less like a neighborhood than a sales brochure that had learned to breathe. My cabin sat on the opposite side, rough and old and stubborn. That was what bothered Marilyn. Not safety, not standards, existence. I looked back at the orange notice inside the kitchen window. Marilyn wanted this cabin corrected, softened, restained, hidden, or gone. She wanted my grandfather's life reduced to a violation list. She wanted me rushed, angry, embarrassed, and afraid. Instead, she had given me a reference number. And in my line of work, a reference number was never just a number. It was a trailhead. The certified letter came 3 days later. I found it clipped inside my mailbox with a red postal tag hanging from the flap. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and stamped across the front in hard black letters. Final compliance warning. Marilyn Pierce knew how to make paper look heavy before anybody even opened it. I carried it inside, set it beside the first orange notice, and slid it open with my grandfather's pocket knife. The letter was 4 pages. Same Silver Pine Shores header. Same expensive paper. Same clean language built to sound like law. Failure to submit a corrective action plan within 15 calendar days shall result in daily penalties of $750, legal recovery fees, administrative review, and potential lien placement against the parcel. This time, she added photographs. My woodpile, my dock, my old fishing boat, the cabin roof, the split-rail fence my father built after a bull elk knocked the first one down in 1976. Each photo had a red circle around it, like evidence in a trial. I looked at the last page and found what I expected. Another county planning reference. Same number as before. CPD-LFR-19-044. Under it, a new line read, Shoreline Consistency Review Pending. That meant she was not only claiming present authority, she was preparing future authority. My phone buzzed before I finished reading. Unknown number. I answered without speaking. Mr. Keller, Marilyn said, I assume you received the final notice. I did. Good. Then you understand the timeline. I understand the threat. Her voice cooled. It is not a threat. It is enforcement. Enforcement requires jurisdiction. A pause. Small, but there. Then she laughed softly. You keep using that word like it will save you. No, I said. The deed does that. Her tone hardened. Your sentimental attachment to that cabin does not override the needs of a modern lakefront community. Marilyn, my cabin predates your HOA by 95 years, and your attitude proves exactly why oversight is necessary. There it was again. Oversight. Standards. Community. Words people use when they do not want to say control. She continued, sharper now. You have 15 days. After that, the fines begin. Once the account becomes delinquent, we move to lien review. If your attorney wants to speak to Daniel's office about planning alignment, I suggest they do it before this becomes expensive. Daniel's office. Not county planning. Not the department. Daniel's office. She had no idea she had just given me a cleaner line to follow. Send all future contact in writing, I said. That won't protect you. No, I said. It protects the record. I ended the call. For a minute, the cabin was silent except for the old refrigerator humming near the pantry. I stood over the table and looked at the two notices, the photographs, the reference numbers, the threat of lien placement. She wanted me reacting. She wanted anger in writing, a recorded outburst, something she could show the board and call instability. I gave her a folder instead. I scanned the letter. I photographed the envelope. I saved the voicemail notification showing the call time. Then I wrote a log entry with the date, time, and exact language she used. Daniel's office. By sunrise the next morning, I was in my pickup heading toward the Flathead County Recorder's office. The road out of the lake valley ran between barbed wire pasture and dark pine. My grandfather used to say fences did two things. They kept cattle in, and they told honest people where not to step. Marilyn had crossed mine because she believed paperwork could move a fence after the fact. That was a dangerous belief. The courthouse opened at 8. I was there at 7:46, parked under a cottonwood, drinking gas station coffee and watching county employees unlock side doors. In the passenger seat sat three things: Marilyn's letter, my grandfather's deed copy, and a yellow legal pad with Daniel Pierce's name written at the top. At 8 sharp, I walked inside. The clerk behind the records counter was a woman in her 60s with silver hair, reading glasses on a chain, and the kind of patience only public records clerks develop after years of watching angry people discover maps do not care about opinions. I need property records for a lakefront parcel, I said. Original deed history, subdivision plats, HOA filings, and any county planning references attached to CPD-LFR-19-044. She looked up when I said the number. You're asking for a lot before breakfast. I know. Name on the parcel? Grant Keller. Her eyes shifted with recognition. Not celebrity, not suspicion. Montana recognition. The kind that comes from old names sitting in old books. Keller Cabin, she said. That's right. She typed for a minute, then frowned. What is it? This planning reference has been accessed several times in the past month. By who? She looked at me over her glasses. County Planning, HOA Council, and a private consultant. What consultant? She turned the monitor slightly away, not to hide it, but to make sure she was reading correctly. Coal Development Strategies. The name meant nothing to me yet, but the way it appeared beside Marilyn's HOA notice and Daniel Pierce's office made the room feel colder. The clerk printed a request slip and slid it across the counter. Records room is down the hall, she said. Box carts are on the left. If you're pulling old plats, use the big table. I signed the slip. Before I walked away, she added, quieter, Mr. Keller, If somebody is trying to fold that cabin into Silver Pine Shores, you may want copies of everything. I turned back. Why would you say that? She held my eyes for one steady second. Because you're not the first old lake parcel someone has asked about this month. I picked up the request slip and felt the first real shape of the fight appear. Marilyn's notice was not a mistake. It was a move, and if other parcels were being touched, then my cabin was not the beginning. It was just the one that pushed back. The records room smelled like dust, toner, and old decisions. I rolled the first plat tube onto the big table and spread the map flat with 4 brass weights the clerk handed me without a word. There it was. Silver Pine Shores, filed in 2019. Clean black lines, lot numbers, common areas shaded in gray, shoreline easements marked with neat arrows. It looked official. It looked final. Then I found my cabin. Or rather, I found where it wasn't. The subdivision boundary curved along the lake, followed the rocky shoreline past Lot 16, then stopped 18 feet before the old iron marker on my property line. My parcel sat outside the boundary like a stone the developer had built around, but never moved. I checked the legend. I checked the surveyor's certification. I checked the legal description on my grandfather's deed. Same result. Silver Pine Shores did not include the Keller cabin. I pulled the HOA Incorporation folder next. Articles, bylaws, architectural standards, enforcement authority. Marilyn's notices had cited those standards like scripture. But on page 28, under exclusions and pre-existing parcels, I found the sentence that cut her whole argument in half. Pre-existing lakefront parcels recorded prior to subdivision filing shall not be subject to architectural compliance enforcement, unless voluntarily annexed by written agreement of the parcel owner. I read it twice. Then I read it a third time, slower. Written agreement of the parcel owner. There was no agreement, no annexation, no signature from me, my father, or my grandfather. Marilyn Pierce had threatened fines and lien review on land her own HOA documents excluded. I made certified copies of the page, the plat, and my 1924 deed. Then I asked the clerk for the activity log attached to CPD-LFR-19-044. She hesitated. That file is planning related, she said. Public record? Most of it. Then I want what I'm allowed to see. She studied me for a moment, then printed the access sheet. The first entries were routine: subdivision filing, shoreline review, drainage assessment. Then, after years of nothing, the file woke up 6 weeks ago. County Planning Department. Silver Pine Shores, HOA Council. Coal Development Strategies. Daniel Pierce. Not just his office, his user ID. The date matched the week after I moved back into the cabin. My thumb pressed flat against the paper. Can I get a copy of this? The clerk nodded. Yes. But Mr. Keller, activity logs don't prove misconduct. No, I said. They prove interest. And interest proves what? That somebody looked at my land before Marilyn knocked on my dock. The clerk said nothing after that. I spent the next hour pulling parcel histories around mine, Evelyn Hart's property, the Morrison parcel, the old Sutter cabin on the North Bend, the Baines lot near the creek mouth. The pattern appeared fast. Each one had been outside or partly outside Silver Pine Shores' original enforcement boundary. Each one received some kind of shoreline conformity notice in the past 18 months. 3 had sold below market. 2 now listed a holding company as buyer. I wrote the names down. Hart, Morrison, Sutter, Baines, Keller. 5 old parcels. Same lake. Same pressure. Same planning reference. That was not coincidence. By noon, I had a stack of copies thick enough to bend the folder. The clerk rang up the certification fees and slid the receipt across the counter. "You planning to sue them?" she asked. "Not yet." "What are you planning?" I looked down at the map, at the clean black line stopping before my family's land. I'm planning to let them explain why they ignored their own boundary. When I stepped outside, my phone had 3 missed calls from Marilyn Pierce. No voicemail. Then a text came in. "You are making this harder than it needs to be. The board is prepared to escalate." I stared at the message and felt no anger this time. Just the cold pressure of direction. I typed back one sentence. "Please provide the recorded document granting Silverpine Shores Enforcement Authority over my parcel." 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her answer came. "You have been warned." I screenshotted the exchange and saved it to the file. On the drive back to the lake, I stopped at the overlook above Silverpine Shores. From there, the neighborhood looked perfect. Matching roofs, matching docks, matching walls of glass reflecting the water. My cabin sat beyond the curve of pines, unpolished and outside their line. That was why they hated it. Not because it violated their standards, because it proved their standards had an edge. And people like Marilyn Pierce could not stand being shown where their power ended. I drove straight from the overlook to Evelyn Hart's place. Her house sat 2 lots down from mine, tucked behind old spruce and a low stone wall her husband built before Silverpine Shores existed. A white porch swing hung crooked near the front window. Tomato vines climbed a wire frame beside the steps, red fruit tucked under green leaves like small lanterns. Evelyn opened the door before I knocked twice. "You're Grant Keller," she said. "Yes, ma'am. I saw the sheriff at your place. I figured people would." She looked past me toward the lake road, then stepped aside. "Come in before Marilyn's friends drive by slow again." That sentence told me more than she knew. Her kitchen was neat, warm, and lined with jars of canned peaches. On the table sat an orange notice almost identical to mine. She tapped it with one thin finger. "Unauthorized agricultural display," she said. That's what she called my tomato garden. I read the notice. Same header, same tone, same threat. $500 per day if the garden remained visible from a common access roadway. "Your parcel is older than the HOA," I said. 45 years older," Evelyn replied. "My husband and I bought it when the road still washed out every spring." "Did you ever sign into Silverpine Shores?" "No." Marilyn said that didn't matter anymore. I looked up. "When?" 3 months ago." She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside were 3 notices, 2 certified mail receipts, and 1 document titled Voluntary Sale Review. My jaw tightened. "Who gave you this?" "2 men came by last week," she said. "Said they were county inspectors. Told me my house might not meet shoreline safety rules. Said if I signed that review, I could avoid penalties and maybe get a fair offer before enforcement got worse. Did they show county identification?" She walked to a side table and brought back 2 business cards. At first glance, they looked official. Flathead County Planning Support, gold seal, names printed in block letters. But the seal was wrong. The county outline was distorted. The font was off, and neither card listed a direct department extension. I had seen fake authority before. It always tried to look cleaner than the real thing. "Did Marilyn contact you before they came?" Evelyn's face changed. Not fear exactly. More like shame for having believed even a piece of it. She called that morning. Said certain legacy parcels were creating concern. Said people who cooperated early would be treated kindly. "Legacy parcels," I repeated. That's what she called us. Us. I set the cards beside the notices. "May I photograph these?" "You think they were lying?" I think real county inspectors do not pressure widows to sign sale reviews at their kitchen table. Her hand went to the chair back. For the first time, her voice shook. Grant, can they take my house? No, I said. Not the way they're pretending. But another neighbor sold. I know. The Sutters were tired. The letters scared them. Their daughter told me they took less than the land was worth just to be done. That was the consequence Marilyn counted on. Not court, not law. Exhaustion. Wear people down until selling feels like peace. I photographed everything. Notices, cards, sale review, envelopes, dates. Then I asked Evelyn to write down exactly what the men said while it was fresh. She sat at the table and wrote slowly in blue ink, her hand unsteady but her words clear. When she finished, she pushed the paper toward me. They said Mr. Pierce's office was aware of the review. I went still. Those exact words? She nodded. I remember because Marilyn had already mentioned him. Daniel again. The line connecting Marilyn to county planning was no longer a footer on paper. It had walked into an old widow's kitchen wearing fake authority. I took out my phone and called Claire Whitman. Claire was the kind of attorney who did not waste greetings. She had handled a boundary fight for a rancher I knew outside Kalispell, and had won it with one injunction and a stack of old survey maps. Whitman, she answered. It's Grant Keller. I need a property rights attorney. What happened? HOA overreach on an exempt lake parcel. Threatened fines and lien review. Possible fake county inspectors. Pressure sale documents. Daniel Pierce's name keeps appearing. Silence held for half a second. Then Claire said, Do not confront anyone. Do not warn them. Preserve every original. Scan copies. Start a written log. And Grant? Yeah. If they are using fake county authority to push landowners into selling, this is bigger than an HOA dispute. I know. No, she said. You suspect. I'm telling you. After I hung up, Evelyn walked me to the porch. Across the road, a white pickup crawled past her stone wall, too slow, too interested. The driver did not wave. Evelyn watched it disappear. That's the second time today, she whispered. I looked at her tomato vines, her old porch, the folder now tucked under my arm. They wanted you alone, I said. She gave a small, sad smile. Most days I am. That one landed harder than Marilyn's threats. By the time I drove back to my cabin, anger had settled into something colder and more useful. Marilyn had made this about my cabin. Evelyn made it about everyone who had been too tired, too old, or too afraid to fight back. And if fake inspectors were scaring people into selling, the next question was simple. Who was waiting with the check? Claire Whitman answered that before sunset. She called while I was scanning Evelyn's documents at my kitchen table. The old printer coughed through page after page while the lake outside went dark behind the windows. Marilyn's notices, Evelyn's sale review, the fake county cards, the activity log with Daniel Pierce's user ID, all of it was now backed up and labeled. Claire did not waste time. Do you know the name Travis Cole? She asked. I saw Cole Development Strategies on the access log. That's him, Travis Cole. 44, developer out of Missoula. He specializes in distressed lakefront acquisitions. Distressed by who? That's the question, Claire said. I pulled 3 recent sales around Silver Pine Shores. Sutter, Baines, and Lowell, all older parcels. All received HOA pressure notices before sale. All sold below market. All ended up in holding companies tied to Cole. I looked at the folder in front of me. How far below market? Enough to matter. Sutter sold at 30% under county estimate. Baines nearly 40. Lowell was worse. Were they inside the HOA? No, Claire said. That's the part that makes this ugly. Each parcel had some boundary complication. Adjacent, partially exempt, or legacy shoreline. Same kind of vulnerability as yours and Evelyn's. The printer stopped. The silence after it felt sharp. Daniel Pierce? I asked. Claire exhaled. His name appears on a county planning memo from 4 months ago. Preliminary review for a private marina corridor on the North Shore. No formal approval yet, but the memo references future shoreline conformity. Same phrase Marilyn used. Future county development alignment. Now the words had a buyer attached to them. I drove into town to meet Claire at her office before she closed. She worked above an old bank building, 2nd floor, no receptionist, no fake plants, just shelves of land records, survey tubes, and a conference table covered in maps. She laid out the sales in a clean line. Sutter parcel, Baines parcel, Lowell parcel, Hart parcel under pressure, Keller parcel under pressure. Then she placed a development sketch beside them. It showed a proposed marina basin, private dock slips, a clubhouse, and a gated access road curving along the North Shore. My cabin sat in the middle of the access route like a nail in a tire. Claire tapped the map. If Cole gets your parcel and Evelyn's, he controls the continuous shoreline he needs, and Marilyn is helping clear it. I can prove pressure. I can prove defective authority. I cannot yet prove coordination. I pointed to Daniel's name on the memo. What about that? It proves he touched the file. Not why. Marilyn keeps invoking him. That helps, Claire said. But it is still circumstantial unless someone says the quiet part out loud. She slid a yellow legal pad toward me. On it, she had written 3 words. Stop. Talking. Record. She wants you angry, Claire said. Do not give her that. Send one written demand for authority. Nothing else. Ask for the recorded document proving Silver Pine Shores can fine your parcel. When she cannot provide it, she will escalate. She already escalated with Evelyn. Then she will escalate with you. People like Marilyn depend on momentum. Once they start losing control, they overcorrect. I looked at the marina sketch again. My grandfather's cabin was drawn as a blank rectangle under the words redevelopment opportunity. Not Keller cabin, not private parcel, not 1924 deed. Opportunity. Something in my chest went still. Claire saw it. Grant, listen to me. You know how to build a file. Build this one clean. Cameras, logs, certified letters, witness statements. No threats, no driveway arguments. If they enter your property, record. If they send paper, preserve. If they make a false claim in public, let them. And then we ask a judge to stop them before they cloud your title. I picked up the development sketch. Can I keep this? It is a public planning attachment. Take it. On my way back to the cabin, my phone buzzed. Email from Silver Pine Shores. Subject: Emergency Shoreline Compliance Hearing. I pulled over beneath a dark stand of pine and opened it. The board had scheduled a meeting for Friday evening. Agenda Item 3. Keller Parcel Enforcement Status. Agenda Item 4. Authorization of corrective action and access restriction. Access restriction. They were going to try to vote me off my own shoreline. At the bottom, Marilyn had added one personal sentence. Attendance is strongly recommended before final action is taken. I forwarded it to Claire. Her reply came in less than a minute. Good. Let her perform. That night, I installed the first trail camera facing the gravel turnoff. The second went near the boat shed. The third watched the south property line, where the old survey marker leaned beside a lodgepole pine. I checked batteries, tested timestamps, and linked the feeds to my phone. At 10:38 p.m., headlights slowed on the lake road. A white pickup rolled past my gate. Same truck from Evelyn's place. This time I had it on camera. By midnight, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the development sketch, the deed, the HOA exclusion clause, and Marilyn's hearing notice spread in front of me. The fight had changed. It was no longer my old cabin against an HOA president's ego. It was a 100-year deed standing in front of a marina plan worth millions. And Claire was right. All I had to do now was let Marilyn make her next mistake where the cameras could see it. That mistake came 2 nights before the hearing. At 1:13 a.m., my phone vibrated against the kitchen table. Motion detected. South property line. I was awake before the second alert hit. Old habits. You spend years working fraud cases. You learn that trouble prefers hours when honest people are asleep. I opened the live feed. At first there was only grainy black and white pine shadow. Then headlights slid through the trees, low and slow. A white SUV rolled onto my gravel turnoff with its lights dimmed and stopped 15 yards inside my gate. Marilyn Pierce stepped out first. No cream blazer this time. Dark jacket, baseball cap, gloves. The clipboard was gone. In its place, she carried a flashlight and a folder tucked tight under one arm. 2 men climbed out behind her. One had a survey rod. The other carried a canvas tool bag and a short pry bar. I did not move toward the door. I did not turn on the porch light. I hit record, then opened the second camera feed facing the old survey marker by the lodgepole pine. Marilyn swept her flashlight across the ground. "Put the first stake there," she whispered. The man with the survey rod hesitated. "That's inside the old line." "That old line is the problem," Marilyn said. "Tomorrow's packet reflects updated shoreline confirmation." The camera microphone caught every word. Updated shoreline confirmation. The phrase sounded clean enough for a meeting slide. But at 1:17 in the morning, with a flashlight and a stolen property line, it sounded like what it was. Fraud wearing a pressed shirt. The man drove a metal stake into my soil with 3 hard hits. The sound carried through the feed, dull and final. Then they moved downhill toward the boat shed. I watched Marilyn stop beside my grandfather's fishing boat. She shined the light over its chipped green paint and shook her head like the boat had personally offended her. "This place should have been gone years ago," she said. The second man laughed under his breath. "Cole's going to love the view once it's cleared." There was the buyer. Travis Cole had just walked into the audio. My hand tightened around the phone, but I stayed still. The men reached the shed. The lock was old but solid. My father had installed it after tools went missing one summer in the 90s. The man with the pry bar wedged it under the hasp. Wood cracked. Not loud, not dramatic. Just enough. Marilyn turned toward the road. "Make it quick." He popped the latch. She stepped inside. Camera 3, mounted under the eave, caught her face clearly when she crossed the threshold. She placed one folder on my workbench, then picked up an older folder from a shelf and slid it under her jacket. The folder she left behind had a printed label. Illegal fuel storage / unapproved dock alteration. My shed contained fishing nets, life jackets, a cracked oar, 2 cans of marine varnish, and a coffee can full of rusty screws. No fuel, no dock modification records. Nothing illegal. The first man looked nervous. "You sure Daniel's okay with this?" Marilyn snapped her head toward him. "Daniel said the county will back the board once the paperwork looks clean. Stop asking stupid questions." That was the sentence. Not suspicion, not inference, not a footer on a notice. A direct link. I saved the clip immediately, then backed it up to the cloud, a portable drive, and an encrypted folder Claire had set up that afternoon. On the feed, Marilyn stepped back outside and dusted her gloves together. At the hearing, she said, "We show the boundary update, the shed violations, and the safety risk. Keller looks unstable. The board votes access restriction, and Daniel confirms planning alignment." The second man asked, "And the old widow?" Marilyn's voice dropped lower. "She'll sign after Keller folds." I stood up then. Not to confront them, to breathe. Because the urge to step outside and end it right there came hard and fast. But Claire's voice held me in place. Let her perform. So I watched them plant the second stake near the dock path and the third by the fence. I watched them photograph their own false markers. I watched Marilyn lock nothing behind her because criminals in expensive neighborhoods often forget they are still criminals. At 1:46 a.m., they climbed back into the SUV and rolled down the road. I waited until their headlights vanished completely before I stepped outside. The air smelled like split wood and wet dirt. My shed door hung crooked. The new metal stakes shone pale under my flashlight. I photographed everything without touching anything. Then I called Claire. She answered on the first ring. "Tell me." They came onto the property, planted survey stakes, broke into the shed, planted documents, took something, mentioned Travis Cole, mentioned Daniel by name. A pause.
Yes to audio.
Audio?
Yes to video.
Yes.
3 angles.
Video? 3 angles. Her voice changed. Sharper now. Focused. "Do not call Marilyn. Do not call Daniel. Call Sheriff Maddox and make a trespass report in the morning. But do not reveal every clip yet. Send me copies now. We move for an emergency injunction before the hearing. They're planning to use the planted documents Friday." "Good," Claire said. "Good." That single word sounded strange until I understood it. Marilyn had just built her own gallows out of paper, video, and arrogance. All we had to do was let her stand on it in public. Friday evening, the Silver Pine Shores Community Hall was packed before I arrived. Cars lined the curb outside. Luxury SUVs sat beside work trucks. Through the front windows, I could see neighbors gathered in clusters, whispering over paper cups of coffee. Marilyn had made sure this hearing felt official. She wanted an audience when she took my cabin apart. I walked in with Claire Whitman on my left and Evelyn Hart on my right. Evelyn wore a dark blue coat and carried her folder of notices against her chest like armor. Claire carried a legal binder thick enough to change the temperature in the room. I carried my grandfather's deed copy, the HOA exclusion clause, and a slim laptop. Sheriff Owen Maddox stood near the back wall with one deputy beside him. He gave me a short nod. Marilyn saw us enter and smiled. Not warmly, not nervously. Like a woman watching the last piece of her performance arrive on time. She stood at the front beside an easel, a projector screen, and 3 poster boards. Enlarged photos of my cabin covered the first board. Red circles marked my woodpile, my roofline, my boat, my dock. The second board showed a boundary map I had never seen before. The third showed photos from inside my boat shed, photos of the folder she planted. "Mr. Keller," Marilyn said into the microphone, "thank you for attending." Her voice carried clean and polished through the room. She had dressed for victory. Cream blazer, pearl earrings, hair perfect, no trace of the woman who had crossed my fence in the dark. I took a seat in the second row. Claire leaned toward me. "Let her go first." Marilyn tapped the microphone. "This emergency hearing concerns a serious and ongoing violation of Silver Pine Shores shoreline standards," she began. "For weeks, Mr. Keller has refused reasonable cooperation. He has ignored notices, challenged community authority, and allowed hazardous materials and illegal dock modifications on property affecting our shared lakefront environment. A murmur moved through the room. She clicked the remote. My cabin appeared on the projector screen, photographed from the lake road. "This is not about one man's nostalgia," she said. "This is about protecting values, safety, and the integrity of our community." Nostalgia. The same word again, dressed up for an audience. She clicked to the next slide. A map appeared showing my property line shifted 20 feet south, swallowing the shed, the dock path, and the shoreline edge into a shaded area labeled HOA Compliance Zone. Claire's pen stopped moving. "That's new," she whispered. Marilyn continued. "Updated shoreline confirmation shows Mr. Keller's structures encroach into community-managed frontage." I watched several board members straighten. Some looked convinced. Some looked confused. One man in the front row frowned at the map, like he knew just enough about land to feel trouble. Then Marilyn showed the shed photos. "This folder was discovered during a safety review," she said. "It documents unapproved fuel storage and dock alterations conducted without notice to the board." Evelyn's hand tightened around her folder. Claire leaned close again. "Almost there." Marilyn's eyes found me. "Mr. Keller has attempted to intimidate this board with selective paperwork," she said. "But tonight, county planning will confirm that Silver Pine Shores has a recognized interest in shoreline alignment." The back door opened. Daniel Pierce walked in. Gray suit, blue tie, county planning face. The kind of calm, bureaucratic expression men learn when they want a room to think they are reasonable before they say anything at all. Marilyn relaxed the moment she saw him. "Daniel," she said into the microphone almost triumphantly. "Thank you for coming." He gave her a small nod, then turned toward the room. His eyes moved across the board table. The poster maps, Sheriff Maddox, Evelyn, Claire. Then he saw me. Everything in his face changed. Not dramatic, not enough for everyone to notice at once. But I noticed. The color drained from around his mouth. His shoulders locked. His eyes sharpened, then flicked away like he had looked straight into a file he thought had been closed years ago. Claire saw it too. "Grant," she whispered. "He knows you." I did not answer. Daniel Pierce had reason to know me. Years earlier, I helped build a federal land fraud investigation into a network of fast-tracked zoning approvals, shell buyers, and private development favors. Daniel's name had never made the indictment, but it had appeared in interview notes, email chains, and one memo nobody at county planning ever wanted read aloud. Marilyn did not know that. She turned toward him, still smiling. "Daniel, would you explain the county's position on shoreline conformity?" Daniel stepped to the microphone slowly. For the first time that evening, the room went truly quiet. He adjusted the mic, looked at the screen, looked at the fake map, then looked at me again. "Before I say anything," he said, voice thin, "I need to clarify what documents are being referenced." Marilyn's smile twitched. "We already reviewed that," she said. "The updated boundary confirmation." Daniel swallowed. "Who prepared that map?" A ripple passed through the board table. Marilyn blinked once. "Our consultant." "Which consultant?" She stiffened. "Daniel, this is not the time for procedural delay." Sheriff Maddox shifted against the back wall. Claire closed her binder softly. That small sound cut through the room. I stood. Marilyn snapped toward me. "Mr. Keller, you will have a chance to respond after the board presentation." "I think now works better," I said. I walked to the projector table with my laptop in one hand. Marilyn stepped toward me. "You are not authorized to control this presentation." Sheriff Maddox spoke from the back. "Let him plug it in." Marilyn turned on him, stunned. "Sheriff, he was accused in public," Maddox said. "He can answer in public." The room held its breath. I connected the laptop. The screen went black, then filled with the first night vision frame. Timestamp: 1:13 a.m. My south property line. Marilyn's SUV rolling through my gate. No one spoke. Marilyn went still beside the podium. I did not press play yet. I looked at Daniel Pierce. He looked like a man who had finally recognized not just my name, but the ground opening beneath his own. And Marilyn, for the first time since she stepped onto my driveway, did not look angry. She looked uncertain. I pressed play. The projector showed Marilyn's white SUV rolling through my gate at 1:13 a.m. The room stayed silent, but the silence changed. It was no longer polite attention. It was recognition beginning to spread. The camera caught her stepping out in a dark jacket and gloves, two men behind her with survey stakes and a pry bar. Marilyn moved toward the projector. "This is inappropriate." Claire stood before she got close. "Do not touch that equipment." Marilyn stopped. Her eyes cut to Daniel, waiting for him to rescue the room. He did not move. On the screen, one of the men drove a metal stake into my property line. The microphone picked up Marilyn's voice. "Tomorrow's packet reflects updated shoreline confirmation." A board member whispered, "That was last night." The video continued. The second camera angle showed them moving toward my boat shed. The pry bar slid under the hasp. Wood cracked. Marilyn looked over her shoulder and said, "Make it quick." Evelyn Hart made a small sound beside Claire. Not fear. Vindication. Marilyn's voice rose. "That footage has no context. Mr. Keller is a former investigator. He knows how to manipulate evidence." Sheriff Maddox stepped forward. "Mrs. Pierce, I'd be careful with your next sentence." She turned on him. "Are you threatening me?" "No," he said. "I'm warning you that accusing someone of fabricating evidence in a public hearing is not the same as proving it." I clicked to the third angle. The inside of my shed filled the screen. Marilyn placed a folder on my workbench, then pulled another folder from a shelf and tucked it under her jacket. The label on the folder she left behind was readable. "Illegal fuel storage / unapproved dock alteration." The room reacted this time. Gasps, chairs shifting. Someone said, "Oh my God." Then the audio caught the sentence that ended the performance. A man asked, "You sure Daniel's okay with this?" Marilyn answered, clear as a bell. "Daniel said the county will back the board once the paperwork looks clean." Every head turned toward Daniel Pierce. His face had gone gray. Marilyn's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her strongest weapon had just become a witness against her. Claire walked to the front with a folder in one hand. "For the record," she said, "I filed an emergency injunction petition with the district court at 3:42 this afternoon. It includes certified copies of Mr. Keller's 1924 deed, the Silver Pine Shores exclusion clause, the recorded plat showing his parcel outside HOA boundaries, sworn notes from Evelyn Hart regarding fake county inspectors, and the original camera files you have just seen." Marilyn snapped, "You had no right to file anything before this board acted." Claire looked at her like she had said something very small. "This board has no authority over his parcel." The words landed hard, not loud, hard. I connected the next file. A scanned map appeared, the official 2019 Silver Pine Shores subdivision plat. I zoomed in on the boundary line. It curved along the lake and stopped 18 feet before my grandfather's marker. Then I displayed the exclusion clause. Pre-existing lakefront parcels recorded prior to subdivision filing shall not be subject to architectural compliance enforcement unless voluntarily annexed by written agreement of the parcel owner. I turned to the room. No written agreement exists. No annexation exists. No lien authority exists. Marilyn Pierce sent fines on land. Silver Pine Shores never controlled. A man near the board table stood slowly. Marilyn, is that true? She stared at the screen. Sit down, Robert. Is it true? I said, sit down. He did not. That was the first crack inside the board itself. Daniel backed toward the side aisle. Sheriff Maddox noticed immediately. Mr. Pierce, he said, stay where you are. Daniel froze. The room went so quiet I could hear the projector fan. Marilyn turned toward her husband. Daniel, say something. He swallowed. I need counsel. That sentence told the room more than any denial could have. I stepped away from the podium and faced him. Do you remember me now? Daniel's eyes met mine for half a second, then dropped. Grant Keller, he said quietly. Marilyn looked between us. What is going on? Daniel did not answer her. So I did. Years ago, I helped build a federal land fraud case involving fast-tracked zoning approvals, shell buyers, and pressure sales around private lakefront property. Daniel's name appeared in the review materials. He was never charged. The last 3 words were deliberate. Never charged did not mean never seen. Marilyn's face changed again. Uncertainty became fear. Claire placed another document on the projector. Coal Development Strategies. Proposed Marina Corridor. Shoreline Acquisition Map. My cabin sat in the access path. Evelyn's parcel sat beside it. 3 sold parcels were highlighted in yellow. This is why they wanted the legacy parcels, Claire said. Not for community standards, for access. Sheriff Maddox turned to Daniel. How many parcels did you help them take? Daniel said nothing. Marilyn whispered, Don't answer that. Maddox looked at her. That's interesting advice. The deputy at the back opened the door. 2 plainclothes investigators stepped inside, followed by a woman from the county attorney's office. Claire had not told me they would be there. She did not need to. Good attorneys do not bring thunder until the roof is already cracking. The county attorney introduced herself and served copies of the injunction petition and preservation notices to the HOA board, Daniel Pierce, and Coal Development Strategies. Marilyn backed away from the podium. This is a setup, she said. He did this because I challenged him. No, I said. You challenged the deed. The deed answered. Her eyes filled, but the tears looked more angry than broken. You ruined everything. I shook my head. No, Marilyn. You put it on camera. Sheriff Maddox stepped closer. Mrs. Pierce, you need to come with us to give a statement regarding trespass, evidence tampering, and false reporting. I am the HOA president, she said. For the first time all night, Evelyn Hart spoke. Not on my land, you aren't. That finished it. Not legally. Not officially. But in that room, the power moved. It left the podium, the fake maps, the orange notices, the husband's title, and Marilyn's shaking hands. It moved to the deed, the video, the witnesses, and the old woman with the tomato garden, who finally said no. The first court order came Monday morning. Claire called before I finished my coffee. The injunction was granted. I looked out toward the dock, where frost still clung to the boards. What does it cover? Silver Pine Shores is barred from issuing fines, liens, access restrictions, compliance notices, or enforcement actions against your parcel, Evelyn's parcel, and any pre-existing lakefront parcels pending review. The judge also ordered preservation of HOA records, board communications, planning files, and correspondence with Coal Development Strategies. That last part mattered most. People can survive embarrassment. They can talk around a bad meeting. They can blame confusion, procedure, miscommunication. But preservation orders are different. They freeze the paper before anyone can burn the truth out of it. By noon, Sheriff Maddox had a statement from the man who carried the survey rod. By Tuesday, the county attorney's office confirmed the business cards used at Evelyn's house were not county-issued. By Wednesday, Daniel Pierce was placed on administrative leave from county planning. Marilyn resigned as HOA president Thursday afternoon. She did it by email. 2 paragraphs. No apology. Lots of words like distraction, misunderstanding, and personal attacks. Evelyn printed it, brought it to my porch, and read the last line aloud. I have always acted in the best interest of this community. Then she folded the paper and looked at her tomato garden across the road. Funny, she said. I thought I was part of the community. The investigation moved faster after that. Cole Development Strategies had not bought land directly. Men like Travis Cole rarely put their own fingerprints on the first layer. They used holding companies, clean names, empty offices, mailing addresses that went to law firms and registered agents. Claire followed the deeds anyway. Sutter, Baines, Lowell. All 3 parcels had been pressured with HOA notices before sale. All 3 had been purchased below value. All 3 had transfer paths that led back to entities funded by Travis Cole's development group. Then the county pulled the planning memo Daniel had touched. Future shoreline conformity, access corridor. Legacy parcel acquisition risk. Risk. That was what they had called us. Not families. Not owners. Not people with history and recorded rights. Risk. When the story broke in the local paper, Silver Pine Shores stopped looking polished. Neighbors who had whispered at the hearing started bringing documents to Claire's office. Old fines, threat letters, emails from Marilyn, notes from consultants. 2 more families had received voluntary sale reviews. 1 had almost signed. The board tried to distance itself from Marilyn, but the paper trail did not make that easy. Meeting minutes showed votes. Emails showed awareness. The fake map had been circulated before the hearing. The judge expanded the injunction. Silver Pine Shores had to publish corrected boundary maps, notify all residents and affected non-member parcel owners, suspend all lakefront enforcement, and refund penalties collected from properties outside the HOA's legal authority. Evelyn got her check first. She held it in both hands at her kitchen table like she did not trust it to be real. $3,400, she said, for tomatoes. Are you going to cash it? I already did, she said. Bought new fencing. That was the first time I laughed in weeks. Marilyn was later charged with trespass, evidence tampering, false reporting, and conspiracy related to the pressure sales scheme. Daniel faced a separate investigation over misuse of planning files and undisclosed coordination with development interests. Travis Cole's marina project disappeared from public filings before winter. Developers prefer shadows. Sunlight complicates business. The old parcels stayed put. Evelyn kept her garden. The Morrisons took down the for sale sign they had quietly put in their garage. Jim Hartley repainted his flagpole whatever color he pleased and raised the flag at sunrise the next morning. As for me, I fixed the shed door with the same kind of hasp my father used. I pulled Marilyn's survey stakes and leaned them against the wall inside, tagged and dated, because evidence belongs in order even after the fight is over. The cabin needed work. It always had. I replaced 2 rotten dock boards, patched the north window, and split enough firewood to stack under the eaves. Not because Marilyn told me to improve anything, because the place was mine to care for, not hers to erase. A month after the hearing, Sheriff Maddox stopped by without lights, without urgency, just his cruiser rolling soft over the gravel. He stood with me at the dock for a minute. Never seen a room go that quiet, he said. People don't like hearing themselves believe a lie. He nodded toward the cabin. Your grandfather would have enjoyed that part. No, I said. He would have asked why it took us so long to check the map. Maddox smiled. When he left, I stayed by the water until the sun dropped behind the pines. The lake turned dark and clean. No projector, no microphones, no orange notices, just wind, wood, and a cabin that had outlasted another kind of storm. Marilyn thought power was a phone call, a husband, and a clipboard. Daniel thought a county title could bend a property line. Travis Cole thought old people would sell if fear arrived on official-looking paper. They all forgot the same thing. Land does not move because someone wants it. A deed does not disappear because a board dislikes it. And a quiet man is not helpless just because he refuses to shout. Most mornings now, I wake before sunrise and take my coffee to the dock. Evelyn's tomatoes are visible through the trees. Jim's flag catches the first light across the water. The Morrison kids' swing creaks somewhere down the shoreline. The cabin still stands, silver logs glowing in the cold Montana morning. Some people use paperwork to threaten. I used it to tell the truth.
And that is the lesson I carry away from all of this. When somebody comes at you with official-looking papers, loud accusation, and the title they want you to fear, don't lose yourself trying to match their noise. Slow down, read the documents, and keep the records. Ask where the authority really begins and where it ends. In my case, the deed, the map, the camera footage, and the witnesses told the story better than anger ever could. That old cabin was never just wood and stone. It was family, memory, and a piece of land that had been cared for long before any board meeting or orange notice saw up. Standing firm didn't mean being rude. It meant refusing to let fear rewrite what was due. A lot of folks, especially those who work hard their whole lives, know what it feels like to be talked down to by someone holding a clipboard. Maybe you deal with an HOA, a bad neighbor, a land dispute, or just someone who thought they could push you around because you were quiet. If you would have stood your ground like Rand did, type yes in the comments or tell us what you would done in his place. And if story about land, dignity, family, and quiet courage speaks to you, go ahead and subscribe. There are more HOA and range just take story coming, and I'll be glad to have you along for the next one.